Hello ladies and gentlemen, and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today's video, it is going to be another ranking. And I am going to be ranking all 15 of Michael Bay's movies. So this past weekend, Michael Bay released his most recent action movie, Ambulance, marking his milestone 15th movie in his directorial filmography. So, how does it compare to his other 14? Well, we're about to find out. Before I hop into the actual ranking itself, I just wanted to let you all know that I have an entire playlist dedicated to all of my ranking videos, so be sure to check that out, and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And so without further ado, let's hop right into things. Number 15. Transformers: The Last Knight. I hate this movie. I'm not sure I've ever been more disappointed in a movie in my entire life. I am a huge defender and lover, for the most part, of the Bayformers movies. But this one was just an absolute disaster from start to finish. Aside from the typical astonishing VFX work and the big bombastic action sequences, this movie just gives me a headache from how mind-numbingly dumb it is. Number 14. 6 Underground. Wow, I did not care for this movie much at all. This to me is what happens when you give Michael Bay just a little bit too much control. It just feels like a giant, egregiously long commercial for teenage boys. The only enjoyable bits are Ryan Reynolds, because obviously, and the final sequence with the giant magnet. Number 13. Transformers: Age of Extinction. This movie isn't necessarily awful. The VFX are spectacular. It's overall some of the best Bayhem that you are ever going to see. I liked the cool new villain whose head turns into a giant cannon sniper thing. The new Decepticons that turn into pixels are pretty damn cool as well. However, I just don't care for Mark Wahlberg as our new lead. In fact, I don't really care for any of the new cast. Except for Stanley Tucci. He's entertaining. I also don't feel that the whole Age of Extinction thing really rings true at all. The trailers set up certain expectations that I really don't feel were met at all. The Dinobots are severely underutilized, and this movie is disturbingly overlong. Number 12. Pearl Harbor. There is no rhyme or reason at all, or any way that you could ever convince me that this movie needed to be 3 hours long. Like, really, no reason at all for this movie to be that long. Especially when the entire first half of this movie is completely devoted to this love triangle that still somehow manages to feel half-baked and forced. I get that they were trying to give it the whole Titanic treatment, but it just did not work. However, when the actual Pearl Harbor attack hits at about the halfway point, the action continues for pretty much the rest of the movie, and it is amazing. Michael Bay is a spectacle director. There are very few directors out there who can capture action quite like him. Big, grand, epic set pieces, explosions galore, and he manages to capture the pure chaos, devastation, shock, and terror of this event so well. Number 11. Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. Despite this one being so low on the list, I actually have a soft spot for it. Seeing this in theaters when I was just 10 years old, I was completely and utterly infatuated with it. I loved it. Yes, as I have grown older and rewatched it countless times, it's easy to see the flaws. The poor writing, the terrible humor and dialogue, the nonsensical lack of any logic whatsoever. But damn it, it is so entertaining that I can't help myself. One of my favorite guilty pleasures for sure. Number 10. Pain and Gain. The biggest issue with this movie is separating the movie from reality. This movie is based on some very true events that only occurred in the 90s. That's not even that long ago now, and even lesser so when the movie released back in 2013. Real people were murdered. Real people are actually on death row right now if they're not already dead. Like, they may have actually already been executed. I didn't even bother to look into it because it's pretty messed up. And for whatever reason that I cannot possibly even imagine, they decided it was a good idea for this movie to focus on the real world killers and make them our heroes of the movie and make the movie a dark comedy. If you view this solely as a movie and you can ignore the true story aspect of it, it actually can be enjoyable. Wahlberg, Johnson, and Mackie are all great. The score is fantastic, and a lot of the comedy actually works, again, when you see it strictly as a movie, and the story is admittedly engaging. But if you are unable to separate the movie from reality, then you aren't going to have a good time at all. Because when you think about it, it can be pretty disturbing. Number 9. The Island. The saddest part about this movie is that it started off so strong. The first 45 minutes to an hour I actually found to be pretty intriguing. But once the curtain is pulled back and all is revealed, it takes a turn for the generic action thriller with a sci-fi backdrop. I don't care much for the decisions that are made after that first hour. A lot of the dialogue is goofy and awkward, and it just really feels like a lot of wasted potential. I still do find enjoyment in it though. Like I said, it starts off really strong. The action, as expected, looks great and is wildly entertaining, even if not all of the VFX has aged that well. I like the sci-fi world that it's set in. Sean Bean plays a great villain, and I also really liked Ewan McGregor, ScarJo, and Steve Buscemi in their roles too. Number 8. Bad Boys. Bay's first movie is just as good today as it was back in 1995. A small-scale, more controlled and character-driven story than what we've come to typically expect from Bay. Will Smith and Martin Lawrence were both perfectly casted, and their chemistry is undeniable. And they are one of the best on-screen duos to ever do it, if you ask me. Bay only directed music videos before this one, and this ended up being so good that it kicked off his entire career with a major bang. Number 7. Ambulance. Despite some jarring cinematography and some questionable decisions story-wise, Ambulance was an absolute return to form for director Michael Bay. Jake Gyllenhaal, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, and Isa Gonzalez all delivered exceptional performances. There's great tension, some surprisingly genuine emotional moments, and a whole lot of Bayhem to enjoy. Number 6. Bad Boys 2. Yes, I actually do like this one more than the original. The original is just more of a small-scale buddy cop action comedy. It works for what it is, and it is still a great movie. But this one just has everything that the first one did well and kicked it all up a notch. More action, more comedy, more gunfights, more of Smith and Lawrence being iconic and spitting out one-liners. And of course, more explosive, chaotic fun. This movie is just raw, unfiltered Michael Bay. Number 5. 13 Hours. The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. I'd say this is likely Bay's slowest movie, but it's for the better as I feel it greatly works to the movie's advantage. It's a true story, and it takes the time to allow us to get to know the majority of these real-world soldiers. When the typical Bay-themed chaos kicks in, it pretty much takes over the entire second half of the movie. But we actually care about the characters this time because they're based on real people that actually experience this real-world event. They have families, a life back home. You feel the stakes, and it elevates the movie beyond the usual that we've come to know and expect from Bay. Number 4. Armageddon. I ended up enjoying this movie way more than I expected to. No, I don't think it really needed to be 2.5 hours long, but I genuinely did have a good time when I just recently watched this for the first time. I thought all of the characters were either actually great, relatable characters, or at the very least they were hilarious and ended up cracking me up all the time. I'm sure most of the science is way off, but that doesn't hinder my enjoyment for this movie whatsoever. It is a ridiculous, rollicking, world-saving adventure. Plus, it gave us I Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith, arguably one of the greatest love songs of all time. Number 3. Transformers: Dark of the Moon. I think this may be Bay's best just straight-up action movie. The story takes us on yet another history-altering Transformers adventure, but this time, for the first time, we get to see a full-scale invasion of Earth. Well, a portion of Earth anyway, and it is brilliant. The characters are admittedly paper-thin by now, and the story doesn't really offer up anything new, but the action is undeniably bombastic and glorious. It is pure, adrenaline-fueled fun. Number 2. The Rock. I'm ashamed to admit that I only recently watched this movie for the very first time. But folks, this is easily among the best 90s action movies out there. Nick Cage is on his A-game. And who would have thought that him and Sean Connery of all people would make an iconic and memorable duo? Ed Harris plays a solid villain, the story is appropriately absurd, and the action is awesomely over the top. A joyride from start to finish. Number 1. Transformers. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Bayhem at its finest, or at the very least, its most fine-tuned. Sure, there are still some annoying typical Bayisms, like terrible off-putting humor and the over-sexualization of the majority of the female characters, which is of course inexcusable, but it does have a competent and well-told story, some phenomenal action, VFX that still holds up today, 15 years later, a great score, a great villain, memorable characters, and big set pieces. It's just all around a big, fun popcorn movie that is surprisingly well-rounded too. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my ranking. While you're at it, feel free to let me know how you would have ranked all 15 of Michael Bay's movies and what ranking you'd like to see me cover next. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button, and if you'd like to see more content, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing that little bell icon, that way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, stay safe, thank you so much for watching, and that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you, and while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.